Hi, I'm Maria, and I'm obsessed with makeup. Not because I hate the way I look and I'm trying to hide my flaws, but just because I think it's fun. I love trying out new looks. I think I might even want to be a makeup artist one day. There was this guy at school, Steve, who started complimenting me on my makeup. And not in a pervy way, he just thought of it as art, like I do. And he thought I was a good artist. I couldn't believe it. For the first time, he said something. Steve is graduating soon. He's already 18, and he already has a part-time job as a security guard and plans to go to the police academy. Why would he have time for a sophomore like me? But pretty soon, we were talking every day in the hall between classes. My family doesn't have a ton of money, so I don't get much of an allowance. And I don't have a job yet. I was reading online about a really nice line of makeup that I think would be great to experiment with. It's made of much better materials than the makeup I have now. And, okay, maybe I was thinking that with these new products, I could get Steve to compliment me again. Problem is, this stuff costs hundreds of dollars. One day, I was at a store with my friends, Becca and Molly, and I saw that fancy brand of makeup I'd been eyeing online. I stopped to admire it, and to bemoan the fact that I'd never be able to afford it. Just put it in your purse, Becca said. I stared at her, shocked. Are you serious? What? Becca shrugged. Molly and I have done it before. I couldn't believe it. Becca was a good student, and I always thought she followed the rules. Becca stole stuff? Molly said. It's pocket change to the corporations who make the stuff. It's not a huge deal. I mean, they were right. And if Molly and Becca stole stuff, and they were both good people, then maybe shoplifting wasn't such a big deal. After all, it was for a good cause. My future career. And impressing Steve. So, without thinking, I reached out and grabbed some stuff, shoving it in my bag. My heart was racing, but as we went toward the front of the store, I felt giddy. I'd actually done it. There in my bag were the products I dreamed of owning. I couldn't wait to get home and try them out. But a voice behind me suddenly called, "Stop." Crap, Becca hissed. Run. She and Molly bolted, but as I started to run, the makeup fell out of my bag and slid across the floor. I froze, horrified. I heard footsteps behind me. I whirled around to find myself face to face with Steve. He was in his security guard uniform, and it dawned on me that I'd never asked him where he worked. He worked here. I was so embarrassed. I wanted to sink into the floor. He seemed embarrassed too. Were you planning to pay for that makeup? He asked. I just say yes, you idiot, I told myself. But I couldn't make myself say the words. He and I both knew the truth. I'm sorry, I burst out instead. Steve looked sort of disgusted. I thought you were better than this. You never seemed like the kind of person who would steal. Tears were stinging my eyes. I've never done it before, I whispered. I couldn't finish the sentence. It seemed so stupid to admit that I was so obsessed with this makeup that I'd done something illegal to get it. I guess Steve felt a little sorry for me because he leaned down to pick up the makeup and said, "Here's the deal. I won't tell anyone this time, but you have to promise never to do it again." I promise, I said quickly. And if I catch you stealing from the store again, I'm definitely going to report you. Okay, I agreed, so relieved that I could have cried. That the fact that he'd left me off with a warning was proof that Steve really did like me. But he wouldn't even look at me. He just said, "Go on, get lost." I hurried home, humiliated, and cried in my room. The next day at school, Steve didn't look at me or speak to me when we passed in the hall. Becca and Molly acted like it was all a joke, like, "Remember that time you got caught stealing? How hilarious." But I had lost Steve's respect and friendship. could have been so much worse. I could have hurt my family, hurt my future chances at a job. It would have been awful. I vowed never to let my so-called friends talk me into something so stupid again. I was feeling so heartbroken for all the humiliation, but mainly for losing Steve. I saw him in school that day, but he pretended like he was on his phone and didn't talk to me. Same thing happened the day after. I was getting too devastated. Why is this happening to me? I really care about Steve and want to at least earn his respect and trust back. I tried to talk to him again, but it didn't work out. A few days after that, I gave up. I have just learned my lesson and decided to start afresh and be a better person. But then someone tapped on my shoulder. I turned my head to find Steve. He smiled at me and said, "Hey Maria, I've missed you." I thought he was joking. But then he hugged me and said that he cannot take this situation any longer and that he wants us to be friends again. He said that he had been thinking a lot about me recently and doesn't want us to end up like awkward strangers. Then he gave me a gift and asked me to open it. I opened it and the only thing I could say was, "Oh my God, Steve." In the bag, I found some of the stuff that I stole the other day. I was shocked. "Steve is the best," he said. "I know you wanted to own them, so here you go. Nothing is more important to me than having you in my life." I was still baffled. I mean, Steve works as a security guard. How can he afford such expensive makeup? Before I had a chance to ask him, he bent down and whispered in my ear, "I stole them for you. Now we're equal. Anyway, I'm starving. Let's grab some food."
Hi, I'm Erica, and for a long time, I was an only child. Some people hate being only children, but I loved it. I got all the presents on Christmas. I never had an annoying sibling to deal with. My parents spoiled me rotten. And then Brienne came along. I was 11 when she was born. Right away, I couldn't stand her. My parents paid so much attention to her. She cried all the time. It was so annoying. If I complained I couldn't sleep because of the noise, my mom was just like, "She's a baby. That's what babies do." Well then, babies were the worst. To make matters harder, my parents thought Brienne was perfect. They were always talking about how beautiful she was, how smart. If you call crying and drooling smart, I guess. They went nuts the first time she smiled, and when she started goo-goo gaga-ing, they took like 8,000 videos. Meanwhile, everything I did was wrong. "Erica, don't run in the house. You'll wake the baby. Erica, don't talk so loud. Don't stand so close to the crib. Go play outside." If they didn't want me anymore, why not just dump me at an orphanage and be done with it? Then they could spend all their time with their precious Brienne. It got to the point where just the sight of my baby sister made me furious. Even my teachers asked me about Brienne. I couldn't get a break from people talking about her. At Brienne's first Christmas, she got dozens of presents. What did I get? Socks. Whenever I wanted to talk to my mom after school, she was always fussing over Brienne. I seriously had fantasies about taking Brienne into the woods and leaving her there. But then something happened. Brienne was over 2, and she still wasn't talking. My parents started freaking out that something was wrong with her. They talked to the pediatrician. He did some tests that determined Brienne could understand words, she just didn't speak. The doctor said some kids start talking late and not to worry about it. But my parents were definitely worried. And as much as I hated that now they were paying even more attention to Brienne, I loved that Brienne wasn't so perfect anymore. One day, I was watching her while my parents were downstairs. She started babbling. "Shh," I told her without thinking. She looked at me with wide eyes. "Don't do that," I told her. "Don't make that noise or your head will fall off." I mimed her head popping off. At first, I wasn't sure she understood, but the next time I caught her babbling, I said the same thing, and this time she started crying. It happened a few more times, and each time I'd tell Brienne a horrible story about what would happen if she talked. I told her I had special powers that let me do it, but that she'd be in big trouble if she tried. I knew it was horrible of me, but I was just so sick of her getting all the attention. The stories got worse. I told her mom and dad wouldn't love her anymore if she talked. I told her they would give her back to the hospital. One day, Brienne said what sounded like dada, and without thinking, I slapped her. I didn't hit her that hard, but I was still shocked at myself. Then she started wailing. I went to my room, heart pounding, thinking if she were ever going to start talking, this would be the time, so she could tell on me. But she didn't. Before I knew it, Brienne was turning 3, and she still hadn't said a word. Now my parents were really freaking out. They took her to a bunch of specialists and were trying all kinds of weird homeopathic crystal alignment stuff to try to get Brienne to talk. The thing was, I was freaking out too. Over the past year, I'd gotten over a lot of my resentment toward Brienne. I was in high school now and had plenty to keep me busy. What did I care if my parents were obsessed with the baby? I even sort of liked Brienne now. She didn't cry as much, and she was really cute. But she wasn't talking, and it was all my fault. I filled her head with all those horrible stories, and I'd traumatized her for life. My parents delayed Brienne's preschool enrollment. They looked like they never slept. They were always on the internet, looking for solutions, for new doctors to try. The guilt began to eat away at me. I needed to fix this. "Brienne," I said one day when we were alone. "Brienne, it's okay to talk. I was just being silly when I said your head would fall off. Can you say mama? Dada?" Brienne just stared at me. "Brienne, please talk. Just say one word. If you don't start talking, they're going to take you to more doctors. That's not good, right? You don't like doctors." Nothing. "Brienne, your head won't fall off," I insisted a little louder. Brienne started to cry. After that, I researched how to encourage kids to talk. I practiced with Brienne whenever I could. I showed her pictures and magazines and repeated the words over and over, but nothing came of it. I was so scared now that I had trouble sleeping. Mom and Dad had just taken Brienne to another specialist, and they wouldn't even tell me what the woman had said. "What's going to happen if Brienne doesn't start talking?" I asked Mom. To my shock, she started crying. She couldn't even answer the question. I realized I was the worst person in the world. I'd hurt Brienne and my parents. I was a terrible daughter. No wonder they'd liked Brienne better than me. I went upstairs shaking with anger and fear. I found Brienne and showed her a magazine picture of a cat. "Cat," I said. "Say cat." Over and over I pointed at the cat and repeated the word, but Brienne just stared at me. Then she smiled a little and clapped her hands, and I lost it. "Just say cat!" I screamed at her. "How hard is it? Just say one stupid word, Brienne. What are you, an idiot?" I kept screaming at her to talk until I heard footsteps pounding up the stairs. My mom burst into the room and found Brienne crying and me shouting at her. Mom pulled me away. "Erica, what has gotten into you?" "She won't talk," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Erica, she won't talk," I interrupted, "and it's all my fault." "What do you mean?" Mom asked. So I told the whole story, all the awful things I'd said to Brienne over the past year. "I don't know why I did it," I sobbed. "You just thought she was so perfect, and at first I thought it was funny, but now she won't talk, even though I tried to tell her the truth." Mom took me aside and calmed me down. "Erica, Brienne's last specialist diagnosed her with a developmental disability. It's not your fault she can't talk." I tried to breathe slowly and listen to what she was saying, but my heart was still racing. It's not? No, it was very wrong of you to say those things to your sister, but that's not the reason. I wasn't the reason? I will never forget the feeling of relief her words made me feel. I was haunted by guilt for a very long time. I always thought it was me, but I was still worried. What's going to happen? Will she ever talk? They're hopeful that with some therapy she'll talk someday. We don't know much yet. "I'll try to help," I offered tentatively. "Like if there are exercises we need to do with her or something. I don't know if she'll ever trust me, but..." "That might be good for both of you," Mom said. "If you can promise me that you'll be kind to her." I said I promise, and I hugged my mom tight. And I've done my best to keep my word. Brienne and I might never be best friends, but I'm trying to be a better big sister to her now. I just hope she knows I love her, whether she ever talks or not. What did you think of my story? Please share your thoughts in the comments and let me know if you ever had a similar experience. And don't forget to subscribe.
I woke up in the hospital room to my parents talking. Once I opened my eyes, they let out a sigh of relief. Dad whispered, "Thank God," and my mom cried from happiness. I said in a comforting tone, "I'm fine, guys. It's a minor accident. I fell off a tree yesterday and they brought me here." And while we were talking, a friendly nurse came into the room. She wanted to check my vitals, but for some reason, my parents couldn't stop staring at her. They kept looking to the point she felt uncomfortable and said, "I'm sorry, is there something wrong with my face?" But my parents didn't respond. It was like they got hypnotized or something, so I said, "Oh no, they're just a bit shocked. I'm their only child. They were scared for me." And then I turned to them and said, "What's wrong with you today?" But they never paid me any attention. They kept staring at the nurse. I was really embarrassed by them. I've never seen them act like that before. And as soon as she finished her work and got out, I yelled, "Mom, Dad, what the hell was that?" My dad shocked me by saying, "I think we just met your kidnapped sister." Wait, what? What do you mean? But my dad didn't respond. He grabbed Mom by her arm and they followed the nurse. I wanted to get up and go after them, but my leg hurt so bad, so I rang the bell for the nurses to get me a wheelchair. I went to the hallway and I couldn't believe my eyes. Mom was crying and Dad was talking to the nurse using a lot of hand gestures. He was clearly emotional. I came close and heard them mention a DNA test. What? That fast? Are they going to ignore the fact that I have no idea about this kidnapped sister? I got sick of waiting for them to explain, so I went back to my room, waiting for answers. A couple of hours passed until my parents showed up. I yelled as soon as I saw them, "I need to know everything right now." Dad explained that I had an older sister, Maria, who got kidnapped 10 years ago. I was 10 at that time. "How come I don't remember anything about her?" I asked Dad. "I was 10. Mom answered nervously. "That's because you had a post-traumatic disorder. Losing her caused you so much pain that your brain deleted all your memories about her. You loved her so much. 2 years after her kidnapping, my parents lost all hope of finding her. That's why they acted as if she never existed. They removed all pictures of her and they didn't mention anything about her in front of me to keep my sanity. When I asked about her, they told me it was my imagination. They didn't want me to feel the pain." Looking back, I understand why they were overprotective all these years. Now I understand why they insisted that I keep living with them after I turned 18. The DNA results came back positive, and the nurse actually turned out to be my sister. My parents were thrilled. It was like they were alive for the first time ever. Her current name was Isabella. She does not remember being kidnapped. All her memories were about foster homes until she got adopted by 2 loving parents who died recently in a car accident. But somehow she managed to build a life for herself and become a successful nurse. Isabella was excited to finally know where she came from. Meeting her biological parents was her ultimate dream. She and I bonded so fast during my stay at the hospital. She was kind-hearted and positive all the time. We had so much in common. We loved the same music, the same food. We even had the same sense of fashion. After I got released, I wanted to spend all my time with her. So one night, I took her to a party hosted by one of my friends. I was so excited for everyone to meet her, but something unexpected happened there. As I was going to get a drink, I noticed a super hot guy standing watching everyone from the side. I was single. I didn't want to miss the opportunity of talking to him, so I went to flirt with him. "What is a good-looking guy doing here all by himself?" He smiled and said, "Why? Will you keep me company?" "I might." He giggled and we started talking. His name was Andrew, and boy was he different. Nice, smart, and funny. I couldn't stop laughing at his jokes, and we kind of both lost track of time until Isabella came after she saw us together. I said cheerfully, "Hey sis, I want you to meet Isabella smiled and immediately hugged Andrew. No introduction needed. We know each other. I was surprised to hear this, but I learned quickly that they used to date. My heart stopped and I looked at Andrew. He too looked disappointed after knowing that Isabella is my sister. They both started chatting about things I know nothing about. I felt like the third wheel. I looked at Andrew. I really liked him, but I don't think it's appropriate now to ask him out. On our way home, Isabella and I were dead quiet in the taxi. I wanted to ask her if she'd be okay with me going out with Andrew. I mean, I didn't know they were together, and I only knew I had a sister like 3 weeks ago. "Isabella, would you mind me dating Andrew? I really like him." Isabella stared at me for a few moments and then said, "No, he's all yours." I hugged her and said, "Oh, thanks. You are the best sister I could ever have." And so, at the same night, I texted Andrew telling him to meet me for coffee. We started dating, and it was fun at the beginning. But then things got really, really awkward. One time we went hiking with Isabella and my parents. Andrew was going up the hill when he stepped on a rock and fell. Ouch! We heard his scream and we all ran to see him. I freaked out to see that his leg was bleeding, but Isabella got into a full-on panic. At first, I thought it was because she was a nurse and she knew how bad it was. But no, I tried to comfort Andrew and she yelled at me angrily. "Move! This is not a time for romance." Mom told me, "Honey, let Isabella do her job." We didn't finish the trip and we went back home. Another time, we waited for Andrew to join us for dinner. He came with a large bouquet of red flowers. I was ecstatic to see him, so I hugged and kissed him. When Isabella saw that, she slammed the door and went inside. She left early. Things got worse from that point on. Isabella refused to stay in the same room with Andrew and me. She would leave whenever we showed any kind of affection towards each other. Then she completely stopped visiting us or responding to our messages. Mom and Dad got really worried. They thought I had done her wrong. Dad asked me suspiciously, "Isabella won't come here anymore. What did you do to her?" And Mom resumed, "Rita, you need to fix this. We can't afford to lose her again." I was pissed because of what they said, so I decided to confront Isabella. I went to see her at night after her shift ended. She didn't look happy to see me. "What are you doing here, Rita? What is that aggressive tone about?" I ignored it and said, "I came to ask what's wrong. You've been away lately. You are not talking to any of us." And then out of nowhere, she started shouting. It was like I unleashed all the anger she had inside. "What's wrong? After all these years, you get the best of everything. You didn't get kidnapped. You didn't live in foster homes where they abused you. You had Mom and Dad by your side all the damn time. And now you're getting with Andrew, my ex? The one I thought would get back to me and marry me?" I was shocked and speechless for a few minutes. I didn't know she was abused as a child, and I definitely didn't know she still had feelings for Andrew. I whispered, "Isabella, you told me I could date him." She didn't let me finish my sentence. She left me standing in her apartment and got out. My heart broke. I didn't mean to hurt her like that. I waited for her to come back so we could talk, but 3 hours passed with no sign of her at all. I went home, and when Mom saw me, she asked fearfully, "So, did you talk to her?" I had to lie, so I said, "Yeah, Mom, Isabella is busy. She's got loads of work. She'll be visiting soon." I left my mom and went to my room thinking of the mess I just created. I know it's not my fault that Isabella got kidnapped a long time ago, but I still felt guilty knowing I had the perfect childhood and she didn't. If I continue to see Andrew, Isabella will get out of our lives. My parents will be devastated forever. I couldn't sleep that night. Morning came, and I made my decision to break up with Andrew. I sent him a message that we need to meet. He told me to come to his apartment, but when I saw him, I couldn't say those words. We were too in love with each other. He asked me, "What's going on?" And I just said awkwardly, "Oh, nothing. I just miss you." He smiled and kissed me, and then we went to his bedroom. I don't think I need to tell you what happened next. But when I got home that night, I noticed that Isabella's car was outside. Did she forgive me? I went in thinking she must have gone back to her senses and she wants to make things right again. But oh no, she told Mom and Dad about me and Andrew. She told them that I stole him from her. Mom was furious. "Is this how you repay your sister? She took care of you at the hospital." I wanted to keep my mouth shut and not make things worse, but Isabella was standing there with a sneaky look in her eyes, like she won. I couldn't bear it. And what was she thinking anyway by going to my parents? Were we 5-year-olds fighting over candy? So I said in a challenging tone, "Actually, I just got back from Andrew's. We had the best time. And oh, get ready, sis. You are going to be an aunt soon." Mom was speechless, and Isabella's face turned dark red. I could feel that she wanted me dead at that point. I was lying. I just wanted to get under her skin. Isabella didn't say anything. She grabbed her purse and left. Mom turned hysterical. She started yelling at me. "How could you do this? She's your sister." And I was pissed. The more she said, "She's your sister," the more I hated her. I hated the fact that I couldn't remember anything about her. At 3 a.m. in the morning, I got out of my room. I was so thirsty, so I went to the kitchen. But on my way there, I saw a light coming from the library room. It was Mom reading some papers. She was holding her head in her hands like she had a headache. Then 5 minutes later, she turned the lights off and went to her bedroom. I had to see them. Mom looked uneasy when she was reading them, and what I saw shocked my entire world. They were my adoption papers. I was adopted. What? Was that the reason I couldn't remember anything about Isabella? She was already kidnapped when my parents got me? Wait, did they adopt me to replace her? I felt as if someone punched me in the stomach. I felt sharp pain in my heart. My whole life has been one big fat lie. I couldn't sit still. I needed time to figure all of this out. I can't stay here. I packed 2 bags and got out of the house and left. I didn't want to speak to anyone. So I changed my number and went to live with my friend in another city. The only thing that I missed while I was away was my parents. Although they lied to me, I couldn't ignore the fact that they loved me and took care of me all those years. So 2 years later, I went back home to see them. They cried their heart out when they saw me. As for Andrew and Isabella, they never got back together. When I left, Andrew started dating another girl. Isabella, on the other hand, stayed single. We are working on our relationship now. Wish us the best. What do you think of my story? Tell me in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.